My name is Brianna, and I'm 23 years old. For as long as I can remember, I never felt like a daughter in my own home. I felt like someone who was only there to work. Every morning, my day began at 5 a.m. While my brother Brandon slept peacefully in his king-sized bed until noon, I was already scrubbing floors, preparing breakfast, washing clothes, and making sure the house looked perfect. My parents had told me the same thing for years, and for more than 2 decades I believed them. Some children are born to be taken care of. Others are born to take care of everyone else, and according to them, I was the second kind. I never questioned it. Not until Brandon's wedding day. Not until the bride's father, a man I had never met before, stared at my face during the family photo and suddenly went pale. His hands started shaking. Then he quietly pulled me aside and asked me a question that made my whole world stop. "Do you know who your real mother is?" Before I go on, if this story touches you in any way, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly want to hear what happened next. And if you're watching right now, leave a comment telling me where you're from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back to the morning of Brandon's wedding, the day I thought would become the worst day of my life. We lived in a 2-story colonial house in Fairfield County, Connecticut. It was the kind of neighborhood where every lawn looked professionally trimmed, every driveway had an expensive car, and every family seemed perfect from the outside. Our neighbors were surgeons, lawyers, and wealthy finance people. To anyone passing by, the Patterson family looked like the American dream, but inside that house, my life felt nothing like a dream. My room wasn't really a room. It was the basement, concrete floor, no windows, a thin mattress that always smelled damp. The furnace sat only a few feet from where I slept, humming through the night. In the winter, it was the only thing that kept me warm. In the summer, the air felt heavy and impossible to breathe. Every morning, my alarm rang at 5. By 5:15, I was upstairs in the kitchen, wiping the granite counters, turning on the Viking stove, and taking eggs and bacon from the Sub-Zero refrigerator. The kitchen island was made of Italian Calicotta marble. Donna once proudly told her book club it had been imported at great expense. I knew every line and vein in that stone because I polished it every single day. Gerald usually came downstairs around 7, with the Wall Street Journal tucked under his arm and his Tag Heuer watch shining on his wrist. He would sit in his leather chair by the breakfast nook without even looking at me. "Is it ready?" he would ask, eyes still on the newspaper. "Yes, Mr. Patterson." "The coffee is too weak today. Make it stronger tomorrow." That was what our conversations sounded like. For 23 years, it was mostly commands, short answers, and silence. I would place his breakfast on the table using the good china, the Wedgwood plates with the silver rim, and then step back into the kitchen. My place was never at that table. My place was beside the sink, eating whatever was left after everyone else was finished. But the cold basement and the endless chores weren't the parts that hurt the most. What hurt most was how they treated me like I didn't truly belong. Brandon's room was upstairs on the 2nd floor, in the corner with bay windows overlooking the garden. He had a 65-inch Samsung TV on the wall, a PlayStation 5, and a walk-in closet bigger than my entire basement space. He went to St. Thomas Academy, a private school that cost $45,000 a year. He played lacrosse. He had tutors, college prep, friends, and freedom. I stayed home. "Brianna is homeschooled," Gerald would tell the neighbors whenever they asked, but the truth was much simpler. No one taught me. I learned to read from old magazines Donna threw away. I learned basic math by counting change at the grocery store. When Brandon turned 18, Gerald gave him the keys to a white BMW 3 Series. I didn't even have a driver's license. I didn't have a single piece of identification. When I was 12, I asked Donna why I couldn't go to the local middle school like other kids. She sighed and said, "Your documents were lost in a fire. Replacing them is complicated. You're better off here with us." And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Back then, I still thought she was my mother. Brandon had an American Express Platinum card connected to Gerald's account. No spending limit. He bought sneakers that cost more money than I had ever held in my hands. I owned 3 dresses, all old hand-me-downs from Donna, adjusted to fit my smaller frame. At dinner, they sat together as a family. Brandon talked about his classes, his friends, and his weekend plans. Gerald nodded proudly. Donna smiled and refilled his glass, and I stood in the kitchen doorway, waiting until it was time to clear the plates. Once, when I was 14, I asked Donna why I couldn't sit with them. She laughed softly, like I had said something silly. "Brianna, honey, the table only seats 3. But it didn't. It seated 6. I had counted. That night, I finally understood something I had been too afraid to admit. I was not part of that family. Maybe I never had been. Gerald called them the family rules. When I was 5, he wrote them on an index card and taped it to the inside of my basement door. It was the only decoration I was allowed to have. Rule 1, you do not sit at the family table. Rule 2, you do not call us Mom or Dad. You will address us as Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Patterson. Rule 3, you do not leave the house without permission. Rule 4, you do not speak to strangers. And if I broke those rules, there were consequences. Gerald kept a thin rattan cane hidden in the kitchen pantry behind the cereal boxes. He only had to use it twice before I understood what would happen if I disobeyed. The first time, I was 7. I had called Donna Mommy in front of her sister. For 2 weeks afterward, my hands reminded me not to make that mistake again. The second time, I was 16. I had been saving grocery change for months, 1 coin at a time, $1 at a time. By the end, I had $17.32. I walked 3 miles to the bus station. I was going to leave. I was going to find someone who could help me. But less than 2 hours later, the police brought me back. "She doesn't have any ID," one of the officers told Gerald at the door. "No identification at all. Is she yours?" Gerald smiled, not the cold smile he gave me. A warm, worried smile, the kind of smile a loving father would give in front of strangers. "She's our daughter," he said. "She's been having a difficult time. We're so grateful you brought her home, officers." They believed him. Then they left. And Gerald locked the door behind them. I spent 3 days in the basement with no proper meal. When Gerald finally opened the door and let me out, he leaned close enough for me to feel his breath against my face. "Without documents, no one knows you exist," he whispered. "And if no one knows you exist, no one will believe you. No one will come looking for you. Do you understand?" I understood. For the next 7 years, I never tried to leave again. Brandon wasn't harsh in the same way Gerald was. He never raised his hand to me. He never kept me downstairs for days. He never made threats. He simply didn't see me. To Brandon, I was like a piece of furniture. Useful, quiet. Always there when he needed something, and invisible the moment he didn't. "Brianna, coffee." "Brianna, my room is a mess." "Brianna, wash the car before my date." When his friends came over, he introduced me with a careless wave of his hand. "That's our housekeeper." Not my sister, not family, housekeeper. And no one ever questioned it. Maybe because I didn't look like the Pattersons at all. They all had sandy hair and brown eyes. I had dark chestnut hair and green eyes that looked almost emerald in the right light. Years earlier, I had asked Donna about it. She reacted so sharply that I never asked again. By the time Brandon turned 26, he was handsome, confident, and working at one of the biggest real estate firms in Connecticut. But he hadn't really earned that position. His fiancée's father had arranged it. Her name was Victoria Whitmore. Blonde, elegant, perfectly composed. She was the daughter of Richard Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Properties, a man worth $47 million. Brandon proposed to her 3 months earlier at Percy in Manhattan with a 2-carat diamond ring he charged to Gerald's card. The Pattersons were thrilled. To them, this wedding wasn't just about love, it was a ladder. I overheard Gerald speaking to Donna on the night of the engagement. "This is it," he said. "This is how we get into their circle. Richard Whitmore could change everything for us." They had no idea how right they were. Richard Whitmore would change everything, just not in the way they expected. The woman Brandon was marrying would become part of the reason the Patterson family's perfect image began to collapse. But not because of Victoria, because of her father. I was 15 when I finally asked the question I had been carrying inside me for years. Donna was sitting in the living room, flipping through a Pottery Barn catalog and marking pages with sticky notes. I had just finished mopping the floors, and my hands were rough from cleaning products. "Mrs. Patterson?" She didn't look up. "What? Why am I different from Brandon?" The catalog slowly lowered. Her eyes met mine. Cold. Flat. Empty of warmth. "Different how?" Why does he get to go to school? Why does he sit at the table? Why do I have to? Because, she cut in, her voice sharp enough to make me freeze. Some children are born to be loved, and some children are born to help others. You are the second kind, Brianna. That is your purpose. That is your place. Then she lifted the catalog again. The conversation was over. That night, I went back downstairs and stared at myself in the small, cracked mirror above the utility sink. It was the only mirror I was allowed to use. My eyes were nothing like theirs. My face was nothing like theirs. But I stopped questioning it. Donna was right, I told myself. Some people were born to serve, and I was one of them. Trying to fight it would only bring more pain. For 8 more years, I believed that. I woke up at 5. I scrubbed, cooked, washed, polished, and cleaned. Every day I told myself the same thing. This was my life. This was what I deserved. Then came Brandon's wedding, and the man who looked at my face and saw someone else entirely. I didn't know it yet, but within 24 hours, every lie I had ever been told would begin to fall apart. The wedding announcement came 6 months before the ceremony. Brandon and Victoria would be married at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains. 200 guests, a live orchestra, a 5-tier cake from a bakery in Manhattan. The total cost was $200,000, generously covered by Richard Whitmore. Gerald practically floated through the house for weeks. "This is the biggest day of our lives," he kept saying. "The Whitmores are old money. Connecticut aristocracy. We need to make an impression." Donna threw herself into the planning. She coordinated with Victoria's mother on the flowers, the catering, and the rehearsal dinner. She bought herself a new champagne-colored Oscar de la Renta dress for $4,000. At first, I thought I might be a bridesmaid. I had spent 6 months helping prepare everything. I addressed invitations, organized RSVPs, picked up dry cleaning, and even practiced walking in heels late at night when no one was watching. I imagined myself in a lavender gown, standing quietly near the altar. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Donna sat me down in the kitchen. "We need to discuss your role," she said. For one brief second, my heart lifted. "Am I walking with the bridesmaids?" She laughed. Not warmly. "No, Brianna. You'll be helping with service, passing out champagne, making sure guests have what they need." The words landed like ice water. "You want me to work at the wedding?" "It's not working," she said, her smile thin and practiced. "It's helping." Then she tilted her head and softened her voice, the way she always did when she wanted her words to hurt more. "You know how you are, sweetheart. Awkward, clumsy. If you stood up there in front of the Whitmores, people would start asking questions. Is that what you want? To embarrass Brandon on his special day?" I slowly shook my head. That familiar numbness settled over me again. Later that night, the wedding invitations arrived from the printer. Embossed gold lettering, 600-gram cotton paper, every name carefully printed and arranged. I searched through them when no one was looking. My name wasn't on the family list. It wasn't anywhere. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Greenwich Country Club. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, champagne that cost more per bottle than I had seen in months. The Whitmores had reserved the entire terrace overlooking the golf course. I wore a simple black dress and a white apron. Donna had chosen the outfit herself. "You look professional," she said, adjusting my collar. "Remember, smile. Don't speak unless someone speaks to you first, and stay invisible." So I did. I carried a silver tray of champagne flutes through the crowd. Whitmore cousins, business partners, old money families whose names I recognized from the society pages Donna liked to leave around the house. No one looked at me. To them, I was part of the background, just another quiet figure moving through the room, until Victoria noticed me. She walked toward me near the bar, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, her engagement ring catching the sunset light. "You're Brandon's sister, right?" she asked softly. "Brianna?" I almost dropped the tray. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria tilted her head, studying me with quiet confusion. "Then why aren't you sitting with the family?" Before I could answer, Donna appeared beside me as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Her laugh was bright, polished, and completely fake. "Oh, Brianna prefers helping out," she said quickly. She's always been shy, happier in the background." Then she placed a hand on my arm with the kind of gentle affection people use when they know others are watching. Victoria's brows drew together slightly, but she gave a polite nod and returned to Brandon. I kept moving through the room. That was when I noticed him. Richard Whitmore. Victoria's father was standing near the railing, a glass of scotch in his hand, staring at me. Not casually. Not with mild curiosity. He was watching me like he had seen something impossible. His face had gone pale. His jaw was tense. For a few seconds, he didn't move at all. Then he started walking toward me. Slowly, carefully, like he was afraid I might disappear if he came too close. "Excuse me," he said. "What's your name?" "Brianna, sir." His expression changed. "Brianna," he repeated, almost under his breath, as if the name itself meant something to him. Then he asked the question that made the room feel like it had gone silent. "Do you know who your birth mother is?" I stared at him, completely confused. "I'm sorry?" He looked at me for a long moment, and there was something in his eyes I couldn't understand. Shock, recognition, maybe even fear. Then, without another word, he excused himself and walked quickly toward the parking lot, already pressing his phone to his ear. Across the terrace, Donna watched him leave. Her smile stayed frozen on her face, but her hand tightened so hard around her champagne glass that her knuckles turned white. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in the basement. Upstairs, the house was full of celebration. I could hear Donna laughing with her sisters, Brandon's college friends opening bottles in the living room, and voices rising through the floorboards like a life I had never been invited into. Downstairs, there was only the low hum of the furnace and the slow drip of a leaking pipe. I held the black uniform I would wear the next day, smoothing out the wrinkles with my hands because I wasn't allowed to use the iron after 9 p.m. Beside me lay the white apron, perfectly clean and stiff. On my lap was a photograph. The only photograph I had of myself with the family. I was 5 years old in it, standing near the edge of the frame while Gerald, Donna, and little Brandon posed together beside the Christmas tree. They were close to each other, touching, smiling. I was apart from them, alone. In 23 years of living in that house, I didn't have a single picture where I stood beside them like I belonged. Not one. Why? That question had followed me my entire life, but I had always pushed it away. Questions brought trouble, curiosity brought consequences. But that night, in the dark, the question refused to stay buried. Why didn't I look like them? Why did they treat me like a stranger? Why had they kept me hidden from the world for so long? And why had Richard Whitmore looked at me like he had been searching for my face? I thought about the way he had turned pale at the rehearsal dinner, the tremble in his voice when he asked about my mother. He looked at me like he knew me, like I reminded him of someone. But that was impossible. No one had ever searched for me. No one had ever wanted me. The next day, I would serve champagne at my brother's wedding while my family pretended I was nothing more than hired help. And after that, life would go back to exactly what it had always been. At least, that was what I believed. I had no idea what was coming. I woke up at 4 a.m. on the morning of Brandon's wedding. The house was silent. I crept upstairs and started breakfast. Eggs Benedict, fresh orange juice. Coffee made exactly the way Gerald expected it before any important event. By 6, the dining room was set with the good china. After that, I moved to the guest room, where Victoria's wedding dress hung inside its garment bag. Vera Wang, $12,000, a hand-beaded bodice and a cathedral-length train. Donna had insisted on keeping it at our house, claiming our closets had better humidity control than the Whitmore estate. But I knew the real reason. She wanted to show it off to her friends. I steamed the fabric carefully, terrified of leaving even one crease. My hands trembled as I worked. If anything happened to that dress, I didn't want to imagine the consequences. Footsteps sounded behind me. Donna appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a La Perla silk robe, her hair pinned in rollers. "Don't touch the beading," she said. "That imported crystal is worth more than you." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." She stood there watching me, arms folded. "When we arrive at the hotel, you'll enter through the service entrance," she said. "Don't let anyone important see you walking in." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." "And do not embarrass us." Her voice dropped lower, colder. "This is the most important day of Brandon's life. If you do anything to ruin it, anything at all, you will regret it." From downstairs, Gerald's voice echoed through the house. "Brianna, where's my coffee?" Donna gave me a satisfied little smile and walked away. I stood there, holding the steamer, staring at the wedding dress I was barely allowed to touch and thinking about the life I had never been allowed to live. And then something inside me shifted. It was small, quiet, but permanent. This would be the last time. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was done. The Ritz-Carlton Grand Ballroom looked like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they seemed unreal. White roses spilled from every surface. The altar, the centerpieces, the archways, the aisle. 200 gold chairs faced the platform where Brandon would soon stand and promise forever to a woman whose family fortune could have bought our entire neighborhood. I entered through the loading dock. The catering manager handed me a silver tray and pointed toward the ballroom. "Champagne service. Keep moving, keep smiling, don't get pulled into conversations." I nodded and took my place. Guests began to arrive, women in designer gowns, men in tailored suits, diamonds flashing under the chandeliers. I moved between them, offering glasses of Veuve Clicquot with a practiced smile. To everyone else, I was invisible, just another server in black. But somewhere in that ballroom, Richard Whitmore was watching, and this time, he wasn't going to look away. My eyes stayed fixed on the floor. A woman in Chanel stopped in front of me and lifted her glass slightly. "Excuse me, are you at the hotel?" "Yes, ma'am." The answer came out automatically. Gerald walked past without even looking in my direction. Donna paused just long enough to lean close and whisper through her smile, "Your posture is awful. Stand up straight." Then Brandon appeared with his groomsmen, laughing as he adjusted his Tom Ford cufflinks. He noticed me and waved me over like I was part of the staff. "Brianna, hey, make sure there's extra shrimp at my table. You know how Dad gets." "Of course." He turned back to his friends. One of them, a former lacrosse teammate, glanced at me with mild curiosity. "Who's that?" Brandon didn't hesitate. "Housekeeper," he said. "She's been with us forever." The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Housekeeper, not sister, not family, but I kept my face still. I had learned a long time ago that showing emotion only made things worse. So I kept walking through the room, offering champagne to people who looked right through me as if I were made of glass. Then I felt it again, that strange, heavy feeling of being watched. I turned my head. Across the ballroom, Richard Whitmore stood alone, his champagne untouched in his hand, his eyes locked on my face. This time, he wasn't just noticing me. He was studying me. The ceremony began at 4 p.m. A string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as Victoria walked down the aisle in her Vera Wang gown, the cathedral train trailing behind her like something from a royal wedding. Brandon waited at the altar, smiling proudly, his hands folded in front of him. Gerald and Donna sat in the front row, dabbing their eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs, playing the role of emotional parents perfectly. I stood at the back of the ballroom with a tray in my hands, watching my family from 50 feet away. The officiant spoke about love, loyalty, and the promise of building a life together. Brandon's voice shook when he said his vows. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she slipped the Tiffany band onto his finger. They kissed. The room burst into applause. And I stood there, invisible, holding champagne I wasn't allowed to taste. For one brief moment, I let myself imagine another version of my life, one where I sat in the front row beside Donna, one where I wore a lavender dress and held a bouquet of white roses, one where Brandon introduced me to his bride as my sister Brianna instead of pretending I was only there to serve, but that life didn't exist. Maybe it never had. The crowd rose for the recessional. Brandon and Victoria walked back down the aisle arm in arm, smiling as rose petals floated around them. As they passed me, Donna caught my eye. Her expression was not warm. It was not proud. It was a warning. Don't forget your place. I lowered my gaze. Somewhere in the crowd, I felt that presence again. Richard Whitmore was standing near the back of the ballroom. He had not clapped. He had not smiled, and he had not taken his eyes off me during the entire ceremony. I didn't understand why, but for the first time in years, a feeling stirred inside my chest. Small, fragile, almost impossible to trust. Hope and I had no idea what to do with it. If you've made it this far, maybe you understand why I'm telling this story. Maybe you know what it feels like to stand inside your own family and still be treated like an outsider. Maybe you know what it feels like to give everything to people who refuse to even say you belong. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been treated like a stranger by the very people who were supposed to call you family? If you have, leave a comment. I want to know I'm not alone. And if this story is hitting close to home, please like and subscribe, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about myself. The reception began with champagne toasts and a 12-piece jazz band. I worked the Whitmore family table, refilling water glasses and clearing appetizer plates. Victoria's mother smiled politely whenever I approached. Her aunts and uncles spoke softly among themselves about summer homes in the Hamptons, charity boards, and people whose names I recognized only from the society pages. Richard Whitmore sat at the head of the table, barely touching his food. Every time I came near him, I felt his eyes on me. It didn't feel threatening. It didn't feel cold. It felt like he was trying to solve a puzzle he had been carrying for a very long time. When I reached for his salad plate, his hand gently caught my wrist. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I need to ask you something." "Of course, sir." "Your name is Brianna?" "Yes." "Brianna Patterson?" "Yes, sir." He slowly released my wrist. His hand was trembling. "Do you know who your mother is?" he asked. "Your real mother?" There it was again, the same question from the rehearsal dinner. I chose my words carefully. "I live with Mr. and Mrs. Patterson," I said. "They raised me since I was a baby." Richard's expression changed. Something in his face seemed to crack. It looked like grief, or recognition, maybe both. "Excuse me," he whispered. Then he stood abruptly and walked toward the terrace doors, already reaching for his phone. Through the glass, I saw him pacing outside, speaking intensely to someone on the other end. Victoria noticed him from the table. "Is my dad okay?" I didn't know how to answer. Across the room, at the Patterson table, Donna was watching everything. Her champagne glass had stopped halfway to her lips. She leaned toward Gerald and whispered something. Gerald turned. His eyes found me, and his face hardened into an expression I had never seen on him before. Panic. I had never seen Gerald Patterson look unsettled by anything. Not until that moment. Then the photographer clapped his hands. "Family portraits, please. Bride's family and groom's family by the floral arch." The Whitmores gathered first. Richard, his wife Eleanor, Victoria's brother, his wife, and a circle of elegant relatives dressed in soft, coordinated colors. Then came the Pattersons. Gerald straightened his tie. Donna smoothed the front of her Oscar de la Renta dress. Brandon wrapped one arm around Victoria's waist. I stayed where I was, tray still in hand. The photographer looked over the group, then pointed toward me. "What about her? Is she family?" Silence fell. Gerald's smile tightened. Donna looked down. Brandon said nothing. Then Richard Whitmore's voice cut cleanly through the awkward pause. "Yes," he said. "She's family." Every head turned. Richard looked directly at me. "Brianna, please come stand beside me." I froze. "Sir?" "You heard me," he said, calm but firm. "Come here." Slowly I set down the tray. My legs felt unsteady as I walked toward the floral arch. Gerald's face turned red. Donna's eyes widened. And for the first time in my life I stepped into a family photograph not as the person standing outside the frame, but as someone being called into it. Gerald couldn't object. Not in front of Richard Whitmore, not in front of the man who was paying for the entire wedding, but I could see the anger tightening his jaw. He looked like he was barely holding himself together. Richard placed a hand gently on my shoulder. His palm was warm, steady, almost protective. "Right here," he said softly. "This is where you belong." The photographer adjusted his lens. "Everyone ready?" Big smiles. Big. The flash went off. For the first time in my life, I was standing in the center of a family photograph. Not off to the side, not hidden in the background, not holding a tray, beside someone who had actually asked me to be there. When the photographer showed Richard the preview on the camera screen, he leaned in close and stared at the image. But he wasn't looking at Brandon. He wasn't looking at Victoria. He was looking at me. His eyes filled with tears. "Those eyes," he murmured, almost to himself. "That chin. My God." Then he stepped away and pulled out his phone again. I only heard pieces of what he said. "It's her, I'm certain. Get the file, the cold case from 2003, and prepare a DNA kit tonight." My heart nearly stopped. What had he just said? The moment the photographer moved on, Gerald's hand closed around my arm. "Outside. Now." He pulled me through a service corridor, past the kitchen and into a narrow hallway where crates of champagne were stacked against the wall. The sounds of the reception faded behind us until they were only a distant hum. "What did you tell him?" Gerald demanded. His face was inches from mine. His voice was low, but every word felt sharp. "Nothing," I said quickly. "I swear I didn't tell him anything. Don't lie to me." His grip tightened, and I tried not to flinch. "Why was Whitmore asking about your mother?" "I don't know. He asked, and I told him I lived with you." Gerald pushed me back against the wall hard enough to make the crates rattle. "Listen to me carefully," he said, his voice dropping into a dangerous whisper. "If you say anything to anyone about our family, I will put you out with nothing. No money, no clothes, no help. Within days, you'll have nowhere to go. Do you understand?" Before I could answer, Donna appeared at the end of the hallway, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. "What's going on?" "Whitmore keeps asking questions about her," Gerald said, jerking his head toward me. "Something is wrong." Donna's eyes narrowed. She walked toward me slowly, the champagne fabric of her gown brushing against the floor. "Brianna," she said, her voice cold and controlled. "After the reception, you're staying to clean. You do not speak to anyone, and whatever Mr. Whitmore wants to discuss, you tell him nothing." She stepped closer. "We are your family. We took you in. Without us, you would have had nothing." Then she smiled, that perfect public smile she used whenever there were people nearby. "Now go back to work, and if you embarrass us again, I promise you will regret it." They left me standing there alone, shaking between the stacked crates of champagne. Gerald's words echoed in my mind. "Without papers, you don't exist." But Richard Whitmore thought I did exist. He thought I was someone. The only question was, who? I returned to the reception floor in a daze. The jazz band had started playing, and couples swayed beneath the chandeliers. Brandon and Victoria danced in the center of the room, their foreheads touching, looking like the perfect picture of newlywed happiness. Gerald and Donna sat at the family table, laughing with guests, playing their roles beautifully. Devoted parents, respected hosts, a perfect family. I picked up my tray and started moving again, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Gerald was right about one thing. Without documents, without proof of who I was, I had nothing. If I tried to leave, where would I go? Who would believe me? Who would even know my name? For years I had told myself this was my life, that it had always been this way, that it always would be. I drifted toward the edge of the ballroom, closer to the exit. For one strange moment, I thought about slipping away into the night, just walking until my legs gave out, letting whatever happened next happen. What difference would it make? No one would miss me. No one would even notice I was gone. "Brianna." I turned. Richard Whitmore was standing behind me. His face was marked with an emotion I couldn't name. Concern, grief, maybe hope. "May I speak with you privately?" he asked. "Just for a moment." I glanced toward the family table. Donna was watching us, her smile frozen in place. "I don't think I should." "Please," Richard said. His voice cracked. "It's important. I've been looking for someone for a very long time." Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was old and faded, the edges soft, like it had been held and unfolded countless times over the years. In the picture, a young woman held a baby in her arms. The woman had dark chestnut hair, green eyes, my eyes. "Do you recognize anyone in this photo?" Richard asked quietly. My throat tightened. I don't know who that is." But somewhere deep inside me, something stirred. Not memory exactly, something older than memory, something that felt like a door beginning to open. Richard led me out to the terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. The night air was cool against my face. Inside, the reception carried on as if nothing had happened, glasses clinking, guests laughing, the band moving into a Sinatra song. Out there, it was just the distant sound of traffic and the pounding of my own heart. Richard held the photograph toward me again. In the soft glow from the ballroom, I could see it more clearly. The woman in the photo looked young, maybe in her mid-20s. Her smile was tired but radiant. The baby in her arms was wrapped in a pink blanket, eyes closed, impossibly small. "This is my sister, Margaret," Richard said, "and the baby is her daughter." He paused. "Brianna Ashford Whitmore." I stared at him. "I don't understand." Richard drew in a shaky breath. 23 years ago, Margaret's baby was taken from Stanford Hospital. She disappeared from the nursery in the middle of the night. His voice trembled. "My sister spent 5 years searching for her. She hired investigators. She worked with federal agents. She never stopped believing her daughter was alive." He swallowed hard. "She passed away when her daughter would have been 5. The doctors called it heart failure, but all of us knew the truth. Her heart had been broken for too long." "I'm so sorry," I whispered. The words barely came out. "But I don't understand what this has to do with me." Richard turned to face me fully. "Brianna," he said softly. "The baby's name was Brianna." My breath caught. "She had green eyes," he continued. "Rare in our family, but Margaret had them too." He gestured gently toward my face. "That nose, that chin, the shape of your mouth, you look exactly like her." I took a step back. "Mr. Whitmore, I think there's been a mistake." "I've been searching for 23 years, he said, tears running down his face. "And when I saw you at the rehearsal dinner, I knew. Then he reached into his other pocket and took out a small sealed container. "Please," he said, "let me take a DNA sample. If I'm wrong, I will never bother you again." I stared at the photo in his hand. The woman with my eyes. The baby with my name. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if everything I had been told about myself had been a lie. But if I'm right... Richard paused, trying to steady his voice. "If I'm right, then the people inside that ballroom are not your real family. They are the people who took you from the life you were supposed to have." The words stayed in the air between us. Took you. For 23 years, I had been told I was worth nothing, that I was born to serve, that I should be grateful just to have a roof over my head. And now this man, this stranger, was telling me that maybe none of it had been true, that maybe the people who raised me had hidden something terrible, that maybe somewhere, once, there had been a family who actually wanted me. It was too much, too impossible. "I can't," I whispered, stepping back. "I can't do this." "Brianna, please," Richard said gently, though there was urgency in his voice. "I have a certified lab ready. The results can come back in 72 hours. I shook my head, overwhelmed. "And if it matches?" I asked. His eyes filled again. "If it matches, then you are Margaret's daughter. You are my niece." He swallowed hard. "And you are the legal heir to the trust she created before she passed." I stopped breathing for a second. "What trust?" Richard looked down at the photograph in his hand. "Margaret never gave up hope that her daughter would be found. She created a trust in your name, in Brianna Ashford Whitmore's name, to be released if you were ever found. It has been growing for 23 years. My voice barely worked. "How much?" Richard met my eyes. $12 million. The terrace seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "But this isn't about the money," he said quickly. "Not really. It's about the truth. It's about answers. And it's about giving my sister the peace she never had while she was alive." Inside the ballroom, the band began playing a slow song. Through the glass doors, I saw Donna scanning the room, looking for me, looking for the person she still believed she controlled. I thought about the basement, the rules, the years of being treated like I was less than everyone else. Then I thought about Margaret Whitmore, spending the last years of her life searching for a baby girl she never stopped loving. I looked at Richard. "What do I need to do?" He opened the DNA kit carefully. "Just open your mouth." The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I went back to my routine as if nothing had changed. I woke up at 5. I scrubbed, cooked, washed, folded, polished, and cleaned. But everything felt different now. Every time Gerald gave me an order, I looked at him and wondered, what did you really do? Every time Donna corrected me, I heard Richard's voice in my head. The people who took you from the life you were supposed to have. They noticed the change in me almost immediately. "What's wrong with you?" Donna demanded on the second morning. I had let the coffee sit too long, and it had turned bitter. "Nothing, Mrs. Patterson," I said. "I'm just tired." "You're always tired." She poured the coffee down the sink. "Make another pot, and this time, pay attention." So, I made another pot. I washed the dishes. I folded the laundry. And all day long, I carried a slip of paper in my pocket. Richard's personal phone number, written in blue ink. Brandon and Victoria had already left for their honeymoon in Bali. The house was quieter without him, but it did not feel lighter. On the third night, I lay awake in the basement, staring at the concrete ceiling and counting the hours. Then my phone buzzed. It was an old Nokia, the only device I owned, bought with money I had quietly saved over time. The screen glowed with a message from an unknown number. "Results are in. Can you meet tomorrow? 10 a.m. Cafe on Main Street. R.W." My heart stopped. Then it started again, racing. I typed back with shaking fingers. "I'll be there." The next morning, I told Donna I needed to buy cleaning supplies. She barely looked up from her magazine. "Be back by noon. I have guests coming for lunch." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." I walked out the door. And this time, every step felt different. I wasn't walking toward another errand. I was walking toward the truth, toward the answer to every question I had been too afraid to ask. The cafe on Main Street was small and quiet, with exposed brick walls, mismatched chairs, and the smell of fresh espresso in the air. Richard was already there when I arrived. He sat at a corner table with a manila envelope in front of him. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept at all. "Brianna." He stood when he saw me. "Thank you for coming." "What do the results say?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid the envelope across the table. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a document full of numbers, markers, and technical language I didn't understand. But one section had been highlighted in yellow. Probability of biological relationship, 99.97%. Conclusion. The tested individual, Brianna Patterson, is consistent with being the biological daughter of Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. I read it once, then again, then a third time. The words did not change. Richard's voice was soft when he spoke. "You're my niece," he said. "You're Margaret's daughter. You're Brianna Ashford Whitmore." The room seemed to shift around me. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. "This is real?" "It's real." He reached across the table and placed his hand gently over mine. "I've already contacted federal investigators. The old case from 2003 is being reopened." I stared at him. "What happens now?" Richard's expression changed. The grief was still there, but now there was something else beneath it. Resolve. "Gerald and Donna Patterson will be investigated," he said. "If they were involved in taking you, hiding your identity, or keeping you without legal records, they will have to answer for it." "Answer for it?" He nodded. "There could be serious federal charges, identity fraud, concealing a child's records, endangering a minor. And if investigators find a wider network was involved, it becomes even more serious." I sat back slowly, holding the DNA report against my chest. 23 years. 23 years of sleeping in that basement. 23 years of being told I was nothing. 23 years of believing I had been born to serve people who never even called me family, and none of it was true. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't unwanted. I had a name. I had a family. I had a mother who had loved me so deeply that losing me had broken something inside her forever. And now, finally, the truth was stepping into the light. I want to pause here for a moment, because this was the moment my entire life changed. For 23 years, I believed the story they told me. That I was nobody, that I deserved nothing, that no one was coming. And then, in just 72 hours, one DNA test shattered that lie completely. But now I had a choice to make. I could go back to that house and pretend I still belonged to the people who had hidden the truth from me, or I could walk away from everything I had ever known, and help bring the whole story into the open. I had two choices. I could leave quietly, start over somewhere far away, and never look back. Or I could let the truth come out and allow Gerald and Donna to finally answer for what they had done. What would you do? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. And if you're still watching, make sure you subscribe, because the final confrontation was about to begin. And it would change everything. 1 week later, everything was in place. Richard invited the Patterson family to his estate in Greenwich, a 12-bedroom mansion sitting on 5 acres of perfectly landscaped land. Stone gates guarded the entrance, and a circular driveway curved around rows of sculpted topiaries. The official reason for the meeting was simple: business opportunities for Brandon. Gerald was thrilled when the invitation arrived. "This is it," he said proudly at dinner. "Richard Whitmore wants to bring me into his inner circle. I knew this marriage would open doors." Donna spent 3 full days choosing what to wear. In the end, she picked a pale blue Armani pantsuit, pearl earrings, and had her hair freshly highlighted. Brandon and Victoria were flying back early from Bali just to attend the meeting. No one suspected a thing. Of course, I was told to come along too. "To help serve refreshments," Donna said, as if that should have been obvious. I didn't argue. When we pulled up to the Whitmore estate, Gerald let out a low whistle. "This place must be worth $30 million. Easy." "More," Donna murmured, her eyes shining. We were led into the main sitting room, a massive space with 20-foot ceilings, oil paintings in gilded frames, and furniture that looked too expensive to touch. Richard greeted everyone warmly. He shook Gerald's hand. He kissed Donna politely on the cheek. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," he said. "Brandon and Victoria should be here any moment." I stayed near the doorway, watching. Gerald didn't notice the other people in the house. The man in the gray suit waiting just beyond the sitting room. The woman seated nearby with a manila folder resting on her lap. But I noticed them. Richard caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. Federal investigators were already there. The evidence was ready, and Gerald and Donna Patterson had walked straight into the moment they had spent 23 years avoiding. A housekeeper entered with a formal tea service, carrying bone china that looked more expensive than the Patterson family car. Donna accepted her cup with exaggerated elegance, crossing her legs at the ankle like she was posing for a magazine. "This is a beautiful home, Richard," she said. "Absolutely stunning." "Thank you." Richard sat in his armchair, his expression calm and unreadable. "I wanted to discuss something with you before Brandon arrives." Gerald leaned forward, eager. "Of course, anything." Richard's eyes moved toward me. "It's about Brianna." Gerald's cup rattled softly against its saucer. "Brianna?" "Yes," Richard said. "She's been part of your family for quite some time, hasn't she?" Donna answered quickly. "Since she was a baby. We took her in when she was just a few months old, gave her everything, a home, food, and education. We've been very good to her." "Took her in?" Richard repeated slowly. "That's interesting." Donna's smile stiffened. Richard opened the leather portfolio on the table beside him. "Because I had my attorneys check the county records. There is no adoption paperwork on file for anyone named Brianna Patterson." The room went quiet. Gerald carefully set down his teacup. "The records must be incomplete," he said. "You know how government offices are. Things get misplaced." "I checked with the state of Connecticut as well," Richard continued, still perfectly calm. "No birth certificate, no social security number issued at birth, no hospital records anywhere in the tri-state area." Donna's polished smile began to crack. "What exactly are you suggesting, Richard?" "I'm saying that Brianna has no legal identity," he said. "No documentation, no official history." Then he leaned forward slightly. "Which raises a very important question." His eyes settled on Gerald. "Where did she come from?" Gerald stood abruptly. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't appreciate the tone." Richard didn't move. "It isn't a game, Gerald." He opened the folder. "But I think you should see what's inside this file." Richard took out 2 documents and placed them on the coffee table. The first was the DNA report I had already seen, with the highlighted conclusion and the 99.97% result. The second was older, a copied federal case report with a number printed at the top and a red confidential stamp across the page. Richard pointed to the DNA report. "This confirms that Brianna is a 99.97% genetic match to my late sister Margaret Whitmore. She is Margaret's biological daughter." Gerald's face changed color. first red, then pale. Richard's hand moved to the second document. And this is the case file from March 2003. My niece, Brianna Ashford Whitmore, disappeared from Stanford Hospital when she was 6 months old. She was taken from the nursery in the middle of the night and never found. He lifted his eyes to Gerald. Until now. Donna's teacup slipped from her fingers. It hit the Persian rug and shattered. This is insane, Gerald sputtered. We would never. Then explain the documents, Richard said, his voice turning colder. Explain why she has no birth certificate, no adoption records, no proof that she was ever legally your child. There was a fire, Donna said quickly, her voice suddenly too high. Records were lost. There was no fire, Richard cut in. I checked. Every hospital within a 300-mile radius. No fire, no missing records, no Brianna born to anyone named Patterson. The door to the next room opened. A man in a gray suit stepped inside, followed by a woman holding a badge. Gerald Patterson, Donna Patterson, the man said, his voice calm and official. I'm Special Agent Morrison. We have some questions about how Brianna came into your household. Gerald stumbled backward, his face drained of color. Donna began to cry. And I stood there watching as the walls finally closed in on the people who had called themselves my parents. Everything after that happened fast. Special Agent Morrison presented a warrant. His partner, Agent Smith, stepped forward and began reading them their rights. Gerald Patterson and Donna Patterson were being taken into custody on suspicion of serious federal crimes, including illegal custody, document fraud, and endangering a child. Gerald tried to move toward the door. He made it only a few steps before Agent Morrison stopped him and guided him firmly against the wall. The man who had controlled my life for 23 years, the man who had frightened me, isolated me, and told me I was nothing, suddenly looked small. Donna sank onto the sofa, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Brianna, she cried, please tell them this is a mistake. We're your family. We raised you. I looked at her, at the woman who had punished me for asking questions, the woman who had kept me hidden downstairs, the woman who had told me I was born to serve. You raised me like help, I said. My voice was calm, steady. You never treated me like family, not once. We gave you everything. You gave me a thin mattress on a concrete floor. I took one step closer. You took my identity. You took my childhood. You took my mother from me. Donna's face crumpled. We didn't know. We thought you knew. Gerald's voice suddenly cut through the room, harsh even as Agent stood beside him. You knew exactly what we were doing, Donna. Don't pretend otherwise. At that exact moment, the front door opened. Brandon and Victoria walked in, fresh from Bali, tanned and smiling. Their smiles disappeared the second they saw the agents, the documents on the table, and Gerald and Donna being escorted from the room. Victoria's face went pale. What is going on? Within a month, the federal charges were filed. Gerald and Donna Patterson were indicted on multiple counts related to illegal custody, document fraud, and child endangerment. The investigation revealed that in 2003, they had paid $15,000 in cash to obtain me through an underground adoption network. The network had been shut down years earlier, but investigators still had records. My name appeared in an old ledger between a payment amount and a delivery date, like I had been an item, not a child. The trial lasted 4 months. I testified twice. Gerald insisted he was innocent until the very end. He claimed he had been told I was an orphan and that he had simply given me a better life. The jury did not believe him. Donna turned against him during her testimony. She claimed Gerald had pressured her, that she had always wanted to treat me better, but had been too afraid to go against him. The jury did not believe her either. At sentencing, Gerald received 18 years in a federal facility. Donna received 12. Their assets were frozen while civil proceedings continued. The house in Fairfield County, the one with the Sub-Zero refrigerator, the Calicut marble, and the basement where I had slept for 23 years, was seized to cover legal costs and possible restitution. Brandon's world collapsed, too. Richard Whitmore withdrew all financial support the day Gerald and Donna were taken into custody. The $200,000 wedding was now Brandon's debt. His job at Whitmore Properties ended immediately. Victoria filed for divorce 3 weeks later. I can't do this, I heard her tell Brandon over the phone. Your parents paid for a child and built their life around a lie. I can't be connected to that. The man who had grown up like a prince was suddenly alone, unemployed, and buried under debt. And me? For the first time in my life, I was free. Brandon called me 6 months after the sentencing. I almost didn't answer. Seeing his name on the screen still sent something cold through my chest. But curiosity won. Hello? Brianna. His voice sounded thin, unfamiliar, not like the confident golden boy I had grown up serving. This voice sounded hollow. I need to talk to you. About what? I'm in trouble. He let out a bitter laugh. That's an understatement. The apartment's gone. The car is gone too, Brandon said. Victoria's lawyer is asking for damages because of everything she went through being connected to my family. I can't get a job anywhere. Everyone has seen the news. I stayed silent. Then came the real reason for the call. I was wondering if maybe you could help me out. Just a loan. Just until I get back on my feet. There it was. After 23 years of treating me like furniture, Brandon needed something from me. Brandon, I said slowly, in all the years we lived under the same roof, did you ever help me? Silence. Did you ever stand up for me when Gerald hurt me? Nothing. Did you ever ask why I slept in the basement? Did you ever once treat me like your sister? I didn't know. You knew, I said, my voice steady. You just didn't care. I was convenient. I made your life easier. And now that I'm not there to serve you anymore, you don't know how to stand on your own. Brianna, please. I'm not going to help you, Brandon. Not because I hate you, but because you need to learn something you never learned growing up. I paused. Actions have consequences, and silence has consequences too. Then I hung up. My hand was shaking, but my heart was steady. For the first time in my life, I had set a boundary, and I meant to keep it. The inheritance became official 3 months after the trial ended. Richard's lawyers had worked tirelessly to verify my identity and activate the trust Margaret had created in 2003. It took court orders, federal confirmation, and stacks of paperwork. But eventually, the final document arrived. Beneficiary, Brianna Ashford Whitmore Trust. Value, $12,847,329.16. Status, active. I read the number 7 times before it felt real. Richard drove me to the bank himself the day the funds were released. We sat in a private office on the top floor, surrounded by mahogany furniture and oil paintings, while a banker explained investment options, taxes, and long-term planning. More than $12 million. More money than the Pattersons would have seen in 10 lifetimes. But the money was not what changed me. It was the name, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. My real name. The name my mother had given me before I was taken from her. Richard helped me move into a guest suite at the Greenwich estate. I had my own room with tall windows overlooking a rose garden, a king-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, and a bathroom bigger than the basement I had slept in for most of my life. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the room in the dark, touching the walls, brushing my fingers across the curtains, reminding myself over and over again that this was real. Richard enrolled me in a college preparation program. My lack of formal education did not stop anything. There were tutors, specialists, and people trained to help survivors rebuild their lives after years of being controlled and hidden. For the first time, people looked at me and saw potential. Not a servant, not a burden, a person. 1 year later, I received my acceptance letter. Yale University. Full scholarship through a program for people rebuilding their lives after exploitation and family mistreatment. I held the letter in my hands and cried for an hour. Then I found something else in the estate archives, a handwritten note from my mother, Margaret. It was dated 2003, the year I disappeared. I visited Gerald and Donna once. It was 8 months after sentencing. I didn't owe them anything. Richard told me I didn't have to go. My therapist told me closure didn't always require one final conversation, but I needed to say what I had carried inside me for 23 years. The federal facility was in northern Pennsylvania, gray concrete, high fences, fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. Gerald was brought in first, wearing standard-issue clothing that hung loose on his frame. He had lost weight, His expensive watch was gone. His wrist was bare. Donna came next. No Oscar de la Renta, no pearls, just plain facility clothing and a face that looked like it had aged 10 years in 8 months. They sat across from me at a metal table. "You came," Donna whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. "I prayed you would come." "I'm not here to reconcile," I said. "I'm here because I have something to say." Gerald glared at me. Even now, after everything, that familiar contempt flickered in his eyes. "Then say it." I met his gaze. "For 23 years you made me believe I was worthless. You made me believe I was born to serve, that I should be grateful for scraps." My voice stayed calm. "But you were wrong." Donna began to cry. "I was not born to serve," I continued. "I was taken from the life I was supposed to have, and you both knew it." "We thought we were saving you," Donna sobbed. "You thought you were getting someone you could control," I said. "Someone who would work without asking questions." She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her interrupt. "I'm not here for your excuses. I'm here to tell you that I'm done." The room went quiet. "I'm not carrying your shame anymore. I'm not carrying your cruelty, and I'm not carrying the lie you built around me." I stood up. "I will never forget what you did, but I will not let it define the rest of my life." Then I walked out. I didn't look back, and I never saw them again. I'm writing this from my dorm room at Yale. It's small, much smaller than the suite at Richard's estate, but it's mine. My name is on the door. My books are on the shelves. My acceptance letter is framed above my desk. Some mornings I still wake up at 5 out of habit. But now, instead of scrubbing floors, I make coffee and read my psychology textbooks. I'm studying to become a therapist. One day, I want to work with people who have survived control, exploitation, and family cruelty. I want to help them find their way out of the darkness the same way someone finally helped me. On my nightstand beside my alarm clock, I keep 2 things. The first is my new birth certificate, Brianna Ashford Whitmore, born March 3, 2003 at Stanford Hospital, California. Mother, Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. The second is the letter Richard found in Margaret's archives, the one my mother wrote to me the week I was taken, before she knew I would disappear from her life. "My darling Brianna, if you are reading this one day, I want you to know that you were the greatest gift I ever received. From the moment you were born, I knew you were meant for extraordinary things. No matter what happens, no matter where life takes you, always remember this: you are loved. You are wanted. You are enough." I read those words every morning. For 23 years, I believed I was nothing. I believed I had been born to serve. I believed I did not deserve a seat at the table. But now I know the truth. I was born to be loved. And I am spending the rest of my life helping others understand that they were born to be loved too. Thank you for staying with Brianna until the very end. Some details in Brianna's story have been dramatized to create a stronger emotional experience and share meaningful life lessons. But the message behind it is very real. Life can change in ways we never expect. Some people grow up without being seen, heard, protected, or valued by the people who should have cared for them most. And somewhere out there, someone may be listening to this right now, wondering if they deserve better. If that person is you, please hear me clearly. You do. You deserve kindness. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. And you deserve a life where your name, your voice, and your story matter. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe. And if you know someone who needs to hear that they are worth more than the way they have been treated, share this with them. More stories about strength, truth, and reclaiming your worth are waiting for you in the description below. Thank you for watching.